Okay. Uh, so let's talk Venom. Venom just came out this weekend. I saw it yesterday. I didn't actually hate it, unlike a lot of people. I think right now it has a pretty bad score on Rotten Tomatoes, but I actually did not hate this movie. Now, going in, I thought this was going to be pretty bad. To me, it looked along the lines of Fat Four Stick or the Ghost Rider movie. Maybe not as bad as Catwoman, but something along those lines. And I feel like I didn't hate it. There were a lot of stuff in the movie that I think I just didn't really, I didn't mind. I didn't necessarily love it, but I didn't hate it. It was an okay movie. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about. I don't know where am I. What am I talking about? Yeah. So yeah, I was surprised that I didn't hate it. I thought it was an okay story, and I was just thinking in terms of how I enjoyed it compared to another superhero movie. Now, it's not similar in terms of the kind of film it is, or especially the tone, but the first Fantastic Four movie, not the very first one that was done just to hold on to the copyright. I'm talking about the one, what was it, early 2000s, that got a sequel with the Silver Surfer and the Galactus Cloud. Now, that movie, well, was not, I'll acknowledge it wasn't great, but it wasn't that bad either. It was okay. And that's kind of how I feel about this Venom movie. It's inoffensive. I think, like a lot of people are saying, it's the things it does get right are the Eddie Brock and Venom relationship, when it does finally focus on that. But the other stuff in the film leading up to that, I didn't mind. A lot of it is somewhat silly. Eddie Brock, being this investigative journalist, asks these just a couple of questions and then is immediately fired, and then is his girlfriend is immediately fired as well for, I guess, asking the wrong questions. And yeah, there's a lot of this in this movie that's kind of silly. The whole plot with I can't remember his name, but he's basically Elon Musk, the guy, the villain, and all the stuff with him it felt like it was a little almost ripped out of Fat Four Stick. Not the way it was necessarily portrayed, but, well, a little bit like that. But this whole idea of having a big scientist guy who keeps on harping about how the world is on the brink of destruction, yeah, it felt like it was pulled out of the Fat Four Stick script, and I didn't like that. But it wasn't enough to take me out of the film. It's an action film with this guy who gets this super parasite, as he keeps calling it in the movie. They keep calling it a parasite, and yeah, it's I don't know. It's a weird movie. Definitely. So some things of note. I liked how at the beginning of the movie they do mention New York City and the Daily Bugle. Now, going into this movie, we didn't know how separated it was going to be. Now, obviously, Spider-Man doesn't show up, and there's no mention of Peter Parker. But I do like it that they do set it up to the idea that they could still coexist. Eddie Brock, the Daily Bugle that we all know Peter Parker works for, exists. And Michelle Williams' character even mentions the fact that, he sort of got run out of New York City, which I think maybe is something that could be explored in a sequel. I know Sony wants to have Spider-Man, well, with Venom, because they know Spider-Man is the character that actually sells it. So I feel like they're leaving the door open. Honestly, I don't think I hope Marvel doesn't try to go for it. I really don't think Marvel would, Disney Marvel would go for that. The thing I would be afraid of is that once Spider-Man is done with, I think, the sequel to Homecoming, it's somewhat up in the air of how many more movies he'll do based on what the contract is. Now, we don't know what the contract between Disney and Sony is, but, they are still sharing the character. Sony still has Spider-Man. And so my fear would be that once Homecoming 2 comes out, Spider-Man Far From Home, that Sony will try to pull Spider-Man back in order to make their Spider-Man universe and sort of force Spider-Man into this Venomverse that they've created with Venom. I mean, all they have right now is Venom and some other projects that may or may not get off the ground. And, we'll see how well Venom does at the box office. Though I think it's not doing too terribly. I think I saw the projection that they're going to make, the projection of like 70 million. I'm not really sure if that's great or horrible for this movie. I'll leave that up for other people to say. I think on Box Office Mojo, it said the budget is estimated to be 100 million. So if the domestic is 70 million, that's not bad. That's almost their production budget. And usually with marketing, I think you need to estimate at least make us twice as much as what your production budget is in order to break even, right? That's what they usually say. I haven't seen any estimates of how well it'll do worldwide. So we'll see how well it does at the box office. That was really rambling. Anyway, so I like the Daily Bugle mention in that way, that the whole sort of backstory is hinted at, even if it doesn't go into it. Because obviously from the comics, Eddie Brock is from New York City and he's in New York City. And this movie takes place in California. But it does show that Eddie is from New York. What was the other thing? There was another thing that he said that I liked. Oh, the Jameson reference. I'm not surprised it didn't go anywhere, but it was kind of a nice shout out when at the beginning of the movie when the spacecraft crashes, and then there's they say that there is one person, or I don't remember, but they say, oh, this person, and then they say his name, Jameson. That's obviously a reference to the son of J. Jonah Jameson, the editor for the Daily Bugle, who in the comics is an astronaut, who also, I think, is gets some sort of thing in space and becomes a wolfman or something like that. I'm not that familiar with the character. I thought it was a neat shout out. I'm more like with the Daily Bugle reference, it's things that kind of show that Venom is still kind of part of the Spidey universe, even though he's not really. And I think there are ways they could, in a sequel, kind of link Venom to Spider-Man without having Spider-Man there. I don't know if they'll actually do that, but those are the kind of things they can do without having Spider-Man. Even though I still think having Venom not be related to Spider-Man is weaker than Venom being a Spider-Man character, because Eddie Brock's origin from the comic is always tied to Peter Parker. He becomes Venom because he wants revenge on Peter Parker, and this is right after Peter Parker has ripped the Venom off of him, and because he had the black suit, and so in a way the symbiote also wants to take revenge on Peter Parker for basically abandoning it, I guess. I mean, the whole characterization, I think, is somewhat different in the comics because in this movie, Venom definitely has a voice. I don't know. I've never read like a Venom comic, so I don't know how well the symbiote is actually characterized or how much it has even talked to Eddie Brock or Flash Thompson when he was Venom. I don't think it's as talkative as and this movie is very much a bigger character. You know, this movie is definitely, you have the two characters, Eddie Brock and Venom, and the core of the story is the relationship between the two of them, which I think the film was a little bit shorter than I was expecting. I was expecting, I don't know, I think it was shorter than 2 hours, and it seemed like a little bit more could have been explored there, but I do think they did hit all the major beats for the story to work. It just felt like it could be fleshed out a little bit more than it was. But I think in terms of like in editing the film and stuff, you know, it's usually better to have your film be leaner than too much. Now, I think maybe from other people saying maybe they could have cut some more stuff, but I really feel like the rest of the scenes that with other characters that people didn't like still needed to be there in order to, you know, tell the whole story, as ridiculous as some of the parts were. So to focus on the characters, Tom Hardy is Eddie Brock. I felt like he did an okay job for the character he was playing. This is not how the Eddie Brock has, as I imagine him. You know, he's very much just this sort of much more mild-mannered. You know, he didn't, you know, I don't know. He's just a guy, I guess. Yeah, Eddie Brock is just a guy. You know, it felt like half this movie, Tom Hardy was just kind of like lumbering around, like stumbling around from place to place. And I think it maybe, I don't know if they were trying to be more comedic or maybe Tom Hardy was trying to make it more comedic. It did feel a little strange that it was just, a lot of it just felt like he was off balance watching it. And also, I mean, I don't know how much from just where I was sitting because because the screening I went to, only the first 2 rows were available. Ended up sitting at the front, and because I went to AMC on 34th Street. Usually I go to AMC on 42nd, and I go to the Dolby Theater. And because the Dolby Theater, they have there, if you sit in the front row, a lot of times you never want to sit in the front row because it's too close. But in that one theater, the front row is actually quite far back from the screen, and it's actually very comfortable, and you're not too close to the screen. This on 34th Street, they also recently put in a Dolby Theater, and it is. This is the first time I went there, and it is way too close. So I was like, you know, looking up, and it, you know, to a point, you know, the proportions are a little bit off too, and so like I don't know, it just seemed even more a bigger effect, like Tom Hardy just like stumbling around. I mean, half this movie is just Tom Hardy stumbling around. Like it didn't, like he didn't have any balance. It did give a feel to the character of having like this lot of weight. It's just, like in this movie, Tom Hardy, I don't know how to describe it, but like he feels like a very heavy character. You know, like it just feels like this guy just like bumps around, and that's one of the things that I thought was interesting, but doesn't really have anything to do with the rest of the movie. You know, I think that seems like an interesting way of showing the character and that, but that doesn't really tie into the rest of the way the Eddie character is portrayed. You know, because if that was tied more into how the comic character of Eddie Brock is portrayed, I think that would make more sense. You have this big guy, and like you just feel the weight of him when he moves around, and like the whole world is just like this rock moving around, and that's not really how the character in this movie is portrayed. You know, he's not this big angry guy. I don't know. He's a little generic. He's just, and I don't say generic and necessarily, and that's the worst thing ever. I mean, I think it works for this film. He's just this generic guy. He's this he's not really an ace reporter. He's just an investigative reporter who has a habit of sticking his nose where it should go. And also, I want to say that whole thing where he gets fired for, watching it, I thought it was kind of stupid. You know, he asks, okay, so his boss tells him, okay, even though you're basically known as the guy who asks all these uncomfortable questions, I'm gonna have you go and interview this guy, who's a big deal. Don't ask him any uncomfortable questions. That was a terrible idea from the beginning. He should have known better. Obviously, Eddie is gonna ask him these bad questions. Now, Eddie does do an unethical thing where he breaks into his girlfriend's computer, who he knows is a lawyer who works at a firm that represents this guy, in order to look up, damaging information that he can use to, ask these uncomfortable questions. And so I kind of like that it does, that is a characterization that goes with what I see as Eddie Brock as. And he does do these things that kind of break the rules. But here's the thing. He doesn't get fired for that. He gets fired for asking the questions. Like, he asks these questions, and the guy's like, "Nope, interview over. I'm gonna ruin your life." I don't. And then very next thing, he's getting fired. The guy's telling in the office again. He says, "You're fired." I gave you one chance, and now you're done. And then the next scene, the girlfriend is walking out of her office, and she's been fired too. So, I don't know. Is it possible for something like that to happen? Yes, maybe. I don't know. I'm not an expert on these things, but it just seemed a little ridiculous to me. He didn't. It's not even a situation where he asked all these questions and then the person said, "Okay, yeah, you're not allowed to use any of this," and then he goes and puts it online or something like that. No, he just asked a couple questions in an interview. And none of it would have been able to be used. Like, the interview ended right then and there. I don't know. It seemed like they didn't know. I don't know. It seemed like a bad writing, to be honest. I'm not sure how it would rewrite it, but it seemed like you need to have Eddie actually taking more of an action. And that's the reason why he gets fired. I mean, I think later in the film they do try to portray it, especially with Michelle Williams, what she says later in the film, that it's more about the thing he did when he stole from her computer, and I think they needed to center it more around that. Like, maybe if he had used that stuff and posted it online as like an article or something, and say, like, here's the evidence of that, and it's online now, then he got fired from it. Especially if his boss says, "Okay, I can see you got this evidence, but I don't know where you got it from, and I don't want you to put it online." And he says, and if then Tom Hardy says, "No, I'm going to expose this guy right here and now," and then if you showed that online, then the law for maybe would be able to say, "Oh, we know this came from her computer." Then we can put the dots together because we know you're dating her. This we can tell is our file, so we know how you got it, and that's how she gets fired. And then that would have also been, these are old things. Whatever. It's not important. And I don't know how long it was in the movie. It didn't feel very long. It was just sort of setting up, this is why Eddie Brock is at the state he is when he basically gets the symbiote. That's, I think, one area that needed to be, that I thought was just poorly written. Everything with the Elon Musk guy is kind of hot, twirl mustache villain. Oh, also, the other thing. At the beginning of the movie, there's a symbiote that gets loose from the crashed spaceship, and then it spends, 3/4 of the movie getting from Malaysia to the U.S. so that it can bond with the Elon Musk guy. I don't know. That whole side plot, I'm not sure if it needed to be there. I think maybe in the way they were writing it, they were saying this is why if like it was there right away, maybe it would bond immediately with Elon Musk, or I don't know. I think you needed to cut that and write it differently. Just have it that Elon Musk ends up bonding with it. At that point, he does, and not have this whole, I don't know, building thing where it's like on its way to the U.S. and it keeps jumping from person to person, because all of that, it was somewhat unnecessary, because he has the other symbiotes, and then you have this other symbiote that got loose, and so they go with the other symbiotes back to the Life Foundation, and then it spends the whole rest of the movie getting to the Life Foundation, so it can just bond with Elon Musk and basically try to do what Elon Musk was going to do, but for its own reasons. So it felt completely unnecessary. I think something that would have been more interesting is if at that moment, if at that moment we discovered, instead of finding out that, instead of like Elon Musk, the guy, his name obviously is Elon Musk, but I'm not bothering looking it up. But if we found out that he, instead of him bonding with the symbiote, if we found out at that moment, he had already bonded with the symbiote. And that's one of the things I don't think you could have done in a movie like this. But I even thought of, like, what if you found out those scenes with the symbiote coming to America, switching from thing to thing to get there, had happened 6 months ago, and that he had already bonded with the symbiote 6 months ago. And everything he's been working towards, like the spacecraft, that's all been the symbiote. He's not in control anymore. Anyway, I thought it was okay. It's it does have flaws. In terms of whether I think it needs a sequel or not, I'm okay with the sequel, but at the same time, if they never make a sequel, it's okay with me too. I guess they can do Carnage. That's what they're setting up. If not a sequel, if they want to do it, kind of something down the line. And I'm not really all that interested in Carnage. I mean, how is Carnage different from Toxic or Riot or whatever his name was? It's just another symbiote. He's just gonna go raw. They're gonna do raw. They're gonna do. Instead of silver, it's gonna be red and black. Yeah, that's not interesting to me. I don't know. I don't know. If somebody could tell me what would be so much more interesting about having Venom fight Carnage than Venom fighting this other symbiote guy, please feel free to chime in the comments, because I don't get it. I don't get what's so interesting about Carnage. So I guess that's all my thoughts about Venom. If you disagree, you hated the film, you thought it was the piece of the you thought it was wonderful, feel free to chime in below. Also, if you like watching me talk, because that's what most of these videos are, feel free to subscribe and ring the bell thing for notifications when I post new videos, which is not often enough for a growing YouTube channel, but it's what I had time for. And I guess, isn't there something else? Subscribe, chime bell. Also you can like the video too. I don't know how much that actually affects whether the video shows up on people's recommended or not, but if you liked it, like it. If you dislike it, you can ignore that dislike button and just click on something else. And I'll see you in the next video.